I'm Mihai Mălaimare Jr., and I'm on the Cinematography podcast.
The following podcast contains explicit language. You're listening to the Cinematography podcast presented by Hot Rod Cameras, a program about the art, craft, and philosophy of the moving image and the people who make it happen. Coming to you from the world headquarters of Hot Rod Cameras in Hollywood, California, are your hosts, Ben Rock and Ilya Friedman.
Hey, Ilya.
Hey, Ben. How are you doing?
I'm doing swell. I got a new shock mount for my microphone, and I feel like a new man.
A new shock mount and also a new wallet. You are just like, you're getting all the new things.
Well, that was my, this isn't an actual endorsement, but I got a minimalist wallet. So anyone on YouTube can see it. It's just holds your cards. It's got like a little clip. It's from a company called Haiski. So Ilya, who is on the show today?
It's Mihai Mălaimare, who's been on the show. It's before. It's been wonderful to have him back.
We had him on for Jojo Rabbit a couple of years ago. Probably 5 or 6 years ago now that I think about it.
And he is back to talk about the much buzzed Megalopolis, Francis Ford Coppola's $120 million experimental film. I call it an experimental film.
Oh, yes.
I don't know what else to call it. And it's really interesting because we get into all of the weeds talking about Mihai's experience with this movie and putting this whole thing together. It was shot over the course of years, and now Francis Ford Coppola is going on a road tour.
Yeah. We found this on Hollywood Reporter, but there's only like 6 dates. Red Bank, New Jersey, Port Chester, New York, Chicago, Denver, Dallas, and San Francisco. And it's a screening of the movie followed by a conversation with Francis Ford Coppola. And I will say that if they add an LA date, I will go to that. I'm very interested. Megalopolis is a complex, fascinating, sometimes frustrating, gorgeous to look at movie from, one of the greatest auteurs to ever be called an auteur. There's a lot of filmmakers out there who are journeymen, who do a great job, who make a solid film. Coppola sticks his neck out. That is what he does professionally.
He is a risk taker, and he's been doing it since the beginning.
And now, Close Focus.
This actually rolls in really nicely sort of with what we wanted to talk about for our close focus today, which is, the new guard versus the old guard. There was a time when Francis was the new guard, where he was, the rebel who was like, banging on Hollywood's doors saying, look.
And he was opening doors for people like George Lucas. I don't know if you know this. I know I've mentioned on here this YouTube channel called Cinema Tyler that does these deep dives into movies, and one of them is Apocalypse Now. And when I say deep dive, it's like 10, 40-minute chapters. Like he did one chapter.
It's a fathom deep. Yeah.
Just about Dennis Hopper, right? And he talked about the writing of Apocalypse Now, which started in the late 60s, and it was originally going to be like a docu-style movie, like all handheld black and white for George Lucas to direct.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah.
And obviously, like American Zoetrope, his company produced THX 1138, which was George Lucas's first feature, right? Before
it was
before American Graffiti.
Yeah.
And Coppola was and is a maverick. I mean, like, I think that Megalopolis proves that the maverickiness never stops.
It's absolutely true. But, something that you and I were talking about just before hitting record on this episode was there was an era of time, like the Bob Evans era of Hollywood, where it seemed like young people were at the reins. Young people, or at least the current generation was making decisions about what got greenlit. They were, steering the ship of popular culture. We don't really see that anymore. It doesn't feel like there's anything close to what Bob Evans created.
Well, I have a theory. So, can I float my theory?
Yeah, please.
My theory is, like, especially starting in the late 60s Easy Rider era, when the baby boomers started making way out movies, often influenced by drug culture. There was a rush to Hollywood by younger executives, and Hollywood did not know the old guard. No offense to these movies because they're great, but like the Sound of Music kind of movies weren't resonating with audiences the way they had been. And so starting in the late 60s, there was this influx of people like Robert Evans, and I can't recommend highly enough that people check out the documentary The Kid Stays in the Picture, or better yet, do what I did and read his autobiography, The Kid Stays in the Picture, and you'll hear all about Robert Evans basically creating the new Hollywood of what is called the new Hollywood, which was late 60s, early 70s movies like Chinatown and Rosemary's Baby and The Godfather and Love Story. There's just like an endless list of them, but like all of these noteworthy filmmakers come out of that. And some of them were former Roger Corman people. Coppola was a Roger Corman guy. He'd made Dementia 13, but you've also got, Woody Allen with Annie Hall, who also was a Roger Corman person. You've got Steven Spielberg. There's a huge list of these amazing filmmakers. And then maybe a little bit later, you've got people like John Landis, Joe Dante. You have these like really amazing filmmakers who are doing really fresh new things with the medium of film. And as much as we all like to trash the executive wing when you're in the film business, it's like you look back and you go like all of these Michael Ovitz kind of people in the 70s, the 80s, whatever, they were on the young side. They were, some of the, like Robert Evans was in his 20s when he started running Paramount Studios. And then, you get into the 80s, it's like all powered by young people. Now look at who's running it now. In a lot of cases, it's the same people, Jerry Bruckheimer was making cutting edge action movies 40 years ago. And then he just produced F1. And I'm not saying hang Jerry Bruckheimer up to dry. Obviously, the guy still has stuff he wants to do and does it well. I'm saying that this is my theory, is that in the intervening time, Hollywood became a less sexy place. If you're a Harvard MBA, a Yale MBA, whatever, and you want to go into something and make a lot of money and do something glamorous, what's more glamorous to an executive, founding the next TikTok or Twitter or Facebook, or running a movie studio? And I would argue that I think a lot of the good executive thinkers have been sucked into the tech world. And, there's obviously overlap because Netflix is a tech company and an entertainment company, but they've been sucked into that tech world. And we don't have people running the movie studios who are relating to the audiences that they're trying to reach. And again, I'm not saying kick out all the old people. I think that there should be a diversity of ages, of race, of viewpoints, of whatever, running all of these big studios. And that's how we connect to Gen Z, who are the people who, the stereotype is that it's young people go see movies in the theater. So if we really want to connect to Gen Z and we want to make movies for Gen Z, there should be some Gen Z people in the mix on the deciding end of what gets made, not just the filmmakers themselves. And, and we can even get into that, but yeah.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right here. I think that there is an interesting belief that just because you've been doing something for a long time, especially in Hollywood, especially the leadership at the executive level, that because you've been doing it a long time, that you know what people want now. And that's clearly not necessarily the case. I think that there are some very, very basic, I want to say tropes, or ideas of what will always resonate with people. And it's interesting because I felt like the last few years, people talk about superhero fatigue. People talk about, treading over the same.
It's risk averseness is the problem. We're so risk averse. And when we take a risk, like look at Sinners. To me, Sinners is such a great example of, it's not a huge risk to give Ryan Coogler, a guy who's made a bunch of hit movies, with Michael B. Jordan, a guy who starred in a bunch of hit movies, a movie that's not IP that they could make and a modest for them budget, but then they make something that blew our minds, right? And what a risk averse person would be saying now would be, how do we make a sequel to Sinners, or how do we make our Sinners? How do we copy what they did with Sinners? But what they did with Sinners was they took a risk on someone who's obviously great at what he does with a great team, and roll the dice on, not even that big of a roll of the dice for them, for these companies that are regularly spending 150, 200 million dollars on a giant franchise, to spend $90 million on an R-rated, historical / vampire story with lots of music in it that turns out to be pretty goddamn crowd pleasing.
Yeah.
To me, it's not the world's biggest risk, but it's a risk that the studios forgot how to do, because I feel like the people making the decisions don't understand what makes a good movie. And, that's what a Robert Evans brought to his world. And that's what a lot of the kind of studio heads of old would do, is they're tastemakers, and I'm obviously not saying anything positive about Harvey Weinstein as a human being, but as a selector of movies, he was impeccable 30 years ago. And he was younger, he was in his 30s and 40s when he was doing that, and also terrible things for which he should rot in prison for life for. But, but on the movie selection side, him finding people like, Kevin Smith and Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino, you need people who are visionary to be on the executive side, who also have an idea, have a sense of how to market it, like how to get people to go there. Because I keep hearing people saying, someone who we mentioned earlier, who will remain nameless, but we both know this person, was like saying, well, obviously theatrical is dying. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, it's really interesting, because I think there's a perception, especially across social media, and especially because the industry has been in a depression lately for the amount of work that's going on. But for people just to say Hollywood is dead, throw up their arms and go, look, there's AI coming, people are out of work, Hollywood's over. It's not over. It is shifting from the center of culture and attention. There was a period of time where everybody went to the movies, or everybody watched a television show, or everyone did a particular thing.
When there were four networks.
Well, exactly. When you didn't have 150 options, when you didn't have 500 options, when you didn't have 500 channels.
When you could only hear what was on the radio, or what album you went to a music store and personally bought, but you couldn't turn on Spotify and just be like, hey, I heard of this band that I've never heard of, or it's suggesting I might like this band I've never heard of. And now the algorithm is telling me what I like, as opposed to the guy at Wax Tree Records. But
beyond all that, I think that exactly as you're saying, the issue is now, and I'm going to put some blame really at the old marketing of Hollywood. Hollywood is trying, somewhat unsuccessfully, I would say, to insert the marketing of these very safe, these very risk-averse IP into different ways of reaching their target audience. But I think they've done such a poor job of it. Really, I think that there are some great movies out there that exist, but Hollywood doesn't know. The marketing wing of Hollywood has not been able to adapt to the social media revolution and changes from becoming the center of culture for both television and film as nearly as well as tech companies have, and other people who have said, hey, we can market to these people, the same eyeballs, better about spending their time on these other things. I would like to see Hollywood get better at this, because I feel like if they do that, they'll also be way less risk averse, because they're going to be able to find the people who want to see the specialty stuff. They want to see the really good stuff, the stuff that, wins Oscars, the stuff that gets, cultural conversations about it.
Well, and if I may, I feel like Sinners is not going to make $1 billion. It doesn't need to make $1 billion, because it only cost $90 million. So once it crossed $200 million, it was way in profit. Yeah, including marketing. And it wasn't that long ago that there would be a lot of moderately budgeted movies. I mean, you and I have both have worked in the trenches, and if you gave somebody $20 million, you could make a pretty competent movie. And I remember hearing a debate when Netflix made The Electric State, which was a $250 million Netflix film, only for Netflix, not to be played in theaters, that you could have made $10, $25 million movies, and one of them would have had a better chance. The Electric State is one roll of the dice. Will it work for Netflix or won't it? And I haven't even seen it, so I'm not going to say, creatively what's going on. But it's when we're living in a world where everything has to be that grand and broad and amazing, and not everyone can be Francis Ford Coppola and put up 120 million?
120 million, yeah.
Yeah, 120 million of your own dollars to do it. nobody but somebody like him could really do that. You have to be freaking rich to do that. And but also, when you watch Megalopolis, you do wonder if this had gone through a traditional studio process like Apocalypse Now or The Godfather, what had come through the other end would have probably by definition been less experimental and therefore probably a little bit more mainstream. I don't think I'm being unkind to Megalopolis. I appreciate the fact that Coppola goes out on a limb and does something this wacky. Mm-hmm. But if you want people to be crowding into cinemas to watch it, that's sort of what the gatekeeper does. Is they're not there to rein in Coppola, but they're there to kind of be a counterpoint. When you don't see them as the enemy, when you see them as the part of the audience, then I feel like together you can work together to make something that's going to find an audience. But again, I'm not saying that every executive needs to be under 50, but because
let me interject something just really quick here, because I don't know the ages of the founders of A24. But it was about 12 years ago that A24 came out. I'd be curious, and maybe if someone's listening, they could let us know. I bet that all of them were in their 30s.
Probably.
I bet that, yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Maybe in their 20s. So it's,
you could be in your 70s and be really plugged in and tuned into what is working for who. That's, I'm not, I'm not trying to be ageist about it.
No. Neither of us are trying to be ageist, but I'm just saying,
because if I was ageist, obviously I would be like saying I should never work again. But yeah,
that's exactly right. But what I'm saying is that you have to work a lot harder, where it's in your DNA, and it's very easy when you are the age you're trying to appeal to in a broad way. It's part of your being. It's easy. You don't have to work at it. I think that anyone who's ever turned 40 has suddenly realized that they don't understand pop music the way they thought they did, because it's like that seems to be the first thing that shifts for a lot of people. But beyond all that, look, I think that this is potentially a really interesting time for the industry in a way that I think, frankly, you've heard me be extremely pessimistic about AI. I think that AI is in its current form, and the way that people are using it just sucks. I'm going to just be completely blunt and say that there's a lot of really terrible AI, and it's being thrust upon people. People have never asked for it, but now you can't go onto Google or almost anything without it trying to give you the AI version of things.
Even like talking head kind of YouTube channels. They're doing faceless ones where it's just an AI voiceover, and what's funny is the AI stuff sounds like a real human voice, but it always gives itself away.
I believe the exact opposite when it comes to film production, though. I don't feel that the tools are there yet, but I feel like the ability of AI to be able to offer filmmakers the way to do more with less, to be able to create situations that don't put people in harm's way or put people at risk. And using AI, tool-based AI, it's going to make it so that people can produce incredible things. There's still going to be huge budgets. There's still going to be a lot of technical people. There's still going to be a lot of work that needs to be done. But it allows people to now leverage possibly what would have been previously $100 million movie at maybe, I'm going to say, 3/4 of that price, 2/3 of that price.
It still goes into what I've been saying about AI, which is its main utility will be in visual effects.
That's exactly right. Visual effects and other sorts of specialty operations, animation. Look, I got to say, I'm going to go on the record right now. I am stunned that there aren't more artists right now who draw like manga using AI to turn their manga into anime, or turning their comic book art into something that's animated, because I feel like that is a natural use of AI that, the artist who's come up with all this incredible stuff then takes their own art and then transforms it into a way that then makes it more accessible, or gives them more opportunities. I think that really people who are comic book artists right now have potentially the most capability to monetize their own hard-won sweat and stuff that they've sunk their life into new ways of reaching people. And that for me is really exciting. I can't wait to see that artist who takes their comic book and turns it into something really cool that's animated.
All right. Well, I think we've rabbit holed pretty hard on this. So
we have. We've gone down a deep rabbit hole. But I think all of this directly relates to Megalopolis in some little way, because we're seeing like a really incredible arc of Coppola's career. And Mihai is there in the trenches telling us all about it. We should get to the interview.
Here we go.
The Cinematography Podcast Interview.
Diving right in, there is a lore around this movie. I mean, it goes back 20 years, 40 years. Ben was telling me the story that like Lawrence Fishburne supposedly was talking about Francis talking about this movie during like the making of Apocalypse Now. So I mean, is it? Yeah, I mean, you're as firsthand as we can get. Is this true? How far back does it go?
I think so. I mean, I heard so many stories, and like from my perspective, it's such an interesting evolution. It's pretty much like a full circle, because the reason Francis came to Romania in 2004 was because he couldn't make Megalopolis in 2001, so he needed to shift his attention to a different story, and that was Youth Without Youth, and that's how I met him. So just thinking of it, it's like quite amazing that 20 years after we are still working together, and we got to do Megalopolis together.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's jump right into what was the table read like? I mean, I imagine this movie had to have the buy-in from all of the keys and the cast and everyone else. It's such a distinct vision. What was that first time everyone sat around the table and read it together?
It was, I think I have to remember, I think we did, like the biggest one we did was after the winter break, I think. Because we started with smaller scenes, with Caesar, Julia. They weren't, we didn't have all the actors there, but after the winter break, we had all of them. And it was amazing. It was really amazing. Especially it's like when you do a table read after you shot something, it's so much more interesting.
What do you mean? You shot something and then you did it?
We did, because we had a few scenes where we didn't have all the actors, and like I think Francis wanted to do the table read with everybody, and we couldn't do it in prep there because there were so many actors there. But like after the winter break, we had all of them, and we did a big table read there. I think, I mean, I have to remember. I think we did a table read at the beginning, but we didn't have all the actors. Like. Yeah, I have to remember, but I think that's that. I remember the table read, which was in that strange set with the catwalks, with the walkways.
Oh wow!
So it was
right there.
Yeah, it was right on the side of that set, so it was really interesting because a bunch of us were like right up on the on the rafters. It was really cool.
Well, the rep on, and I don't want to make this all about Coppola because we really want to talk about your work, but the rep on Coppola is tied to you in this way, in that I have always heard, and I don't know if this is what happened on Megalopolis, but that he would do basically a rehearsal period, and he would have the DP kind of film a version of the film during rehearsals, and it's not the real film, but they would cut it together and sort of make a V1 rough sketch of the film before he shot a frame of the actual movie that people would go see in theaters. Does he still do that? And like, no,
not for this one. And it's like, that's what's really interesting about Francis, because like everything is evolving, and like he comes up with new ideas every time, and like he tries all these interesting things. But like since we've been working together, he loves, I mean, he comes from theater, so he loves all these theater plays. And what I've seen him doing, which is really interesting, is not even rehearsing scenes from the script, but what he's telling everybody is creating common memories. So he's doing certain things like a first dinner date, or it's like it's really interesting, where like improvs and theater games, basically, which is great. It's really
are
really
you involved in those? Like, are you there for them? Are you
Sometimes I am. I remember shooting a few of those, but like most of the times they will probably be in the same time with our tech prep, so I'm kind of bouncing from one place to another. But I remember being through a few of those, and that was amazing to watch.
Hmm. Wow. All right. Well, Mihai, let's dive into your experience with this. Let's dive into creating the look. The movie is got this ethereal quality, and it varies and changes a little bit depending on sort of the set pieces and the moments in the movie. But can you talk a little bit about that collaboration and how you came up with this look for the movie?
It's very very interesting to think about it, because again, like I was exposed to certain visual cues from like Youth Without Youth. So I remember seeing one image, like he had a keyframe. I don't know even like when that was done, maybe even earlier than 2000. And it was the giant clock face and Caesar and Julia on top of the world, and that image stuck with me for so long. So it wasn't even like it was interesting because, for example, Ron Freaky shot a lot of establishings and second unit in prep in 2001, and there are hours and hours of footage, and I remember watching that footage because they were shooting with the Sony F900, which is the same camera that we used for Youth Without Youth, and just to get familiar with what a digital camera can do in terms of cinematography. So like I was exposed to visuals for Megalopolis over 20 years. Now when we really started prepping, something very interesting happened. And we were talking about props and cars and things, and Francis told everybody that like he would like to mix things up, and it's like there's no specific time frame. He liked an old Citroen and like still cameras, like for press photographers. He was like, I don't care, I like the speed graphic from the 40s, you know. So it's like very interesting how when you hear that an idea like this, you're like, okay, that's great, but then you realize like, oh, if it's not a specific time frame, then it's like even worse. It's like it's a blessing and a curse in the same time, because you cannot like pinpoint to specific things. And because of that, he spent like a few weeks with Dan Sheriff, and they created like a whole set of art keyframes for specific scenes, sometimes for specific shots. And that's way better than any visual reference, because you get direct feedback from the director, where it's just like with a visual reference, sometimes you have an idea about framing or light or color, but like he tried to put everything in those keyframes. And it was so amazing for everybody, because everybody got it in like right away. It was like, okay, this is the look that you're after. It was so great that like I remember most of us, we had those keyframes printed, and we had them with us on set all the time. And it was great. I mean, it's like a lot of times, like, you know, it's like everybody has his own movie in mind after reading the script, and it's like it takes a while until you really get what the director wants to do with it. But doing these keyframes, it was like we got it right away.
Yeah, I kind of want to get into this keyframes just a little bit more because uh the lore of this movie, from having such a long pre-production and even I guess early productions format to create these keyframes. I know you mentioned that it's the Sony F900 from way back when, from the early 2000s, but can you talk a little bit more about really the reasons for this, and then to not reshoot any of those frames, but to then incorporate them into this movie? Can you explain how this and why this comes together like this?
I think I mean, when you're working on something for so long, you get attached to all those images. And I remember like there were we used a bunch of shots from Ron Freaky's footage, and like it's such an amazing, like he's such an amazing artist. Like I remember from like watching Baraka back in the day, and like it's like you can see his style, and it's like an interesting, like, yeah, in my mind was like, oh, I wish we can reshoot those. But like on the other hand, it's like it's part of the whole discovery process, you know. And again, like a lot of times, when you think about it, like when you're working for something for so long, you might there are things you keep and things you change, and like it's such an amazing process of discovery with Francis. Like every single time he's like trying to. It's like we. I don't think we did we did some storyboards, but very few, and we never really shot list. We were talking about things in general, and like the idea is that when you go on set and you have the actors and you have the sets and costumes and everything, you wanna let yourself, like, you wanna have the option to be inspired by what the actors are doing and by the blocking more than your plans and ideas only.
Yeah.
So you actually used the footage though from 2001.
We
There's some of it in the movie.
there are some in the movie, yeah.
What are they?
There
Can
are
you
some
tell me what
shots.
any of them are?
Well, there are some shots that like were because of course because of the difference in resolution, we had to sharpen them, and there was a little bit of interpolation. Some of them are part of VFX plates, and so on. I mean, they're mainly establishing shots, but they're definitely interesting, and I think they're like part of the whole vision for the movie.
That's so cool, though. I mean, it's kind of cool that its provenance goes back. I mean, even 25 years in filming, like that's great. But it sounds also like, and I also know this from having seen documentaries about Coppola and his working style, specifically about Apocalypse Now, because that's the one that's probably the best documented. But like it seems like he's very process oriented and kind of willing to kind of jettison whatever maybe has been talked about beforehand for what works in the moment. How does that impact you as a cinematographer on a day-to-day basis? Like, are you like, is it ever like you've prepped, you're ready to shoot it a specific way, and then it's like a better idea occurs on set, and it's like, forget all that. Here, now we're going to do this. But then how do you roll with those punches?
Well, I mean, it was a little shocking when we were doing Youth Without Youth, and that was kind of the beginning of our relationship.
Yeah, you've got to be used to it by now. This is your fourth film with the man, right?
Yeah, and it's like the fifth project actually, because we did something that was called Distant Vision Live Cinema. There was another test, which was a whole project in itself. But when we did Youth Without Youth, basically I was 29, and like he loves to call these crazy ideas. So he'll come to you like, okay, here's a crazy idea. And when I was thinking in the moment, I was like, yeah, that's crazy, but like I'm 29, fresh out of film school, and I'm working with Francis, so I better do it. And then you do it and realize how much better the scene gets. So little by little, I got we got in this interesting dynamic where like I'm kind of craving for those moments, and like I know it can be a really stressful situation when you prep for something and all of a sudden you change it 180 degrees, but I know that like somehow I'll be able to find a solution, and for sure it will be better than anything we planned. And it's interesting. It's like it doesn't happen a lot, but when it happens, like every single time, the scene got better.
Oh wow! And like, is it hard then to like go work with like every other director who's kind of more buttoned down about that kind of thing?
It's interesting. Like, for example, there are a lot of similarities with this approach with Taika Waititi. Like I tried for Jojo. I was like, I remember the first day I was not necessarily doing a shot list, but kind of like a drawing with camera positions just to show him, and he was like, yeah, but let's see what the actors are doing, and that was it. Like we never did, like we had to do storyboards for the battle scene, but like it was every day watching the actors rehearse and reacting to that instead of planning everything. So, and I think it's the beauty of filmmaking. It's teamwork, trust, and like crazy idea floating.
Yeah. So I'd like to also, and I have to leave in just a few minutes, so I kind of want to get all my big questions in before I leave. But like, I want to kind of go back to the script. So when you were given the script for this, what did you imagine versus how it turned out?
Well, I think because I was exposed to some of the imagery early on. I was trying to kind of
Before you even read the script, you'd seen.
Yeah. I was kind of trying to refer to that, to what I've seen and so on, but definitely not. I mean, there's another example that like it's perfect for his vision, because we tend to do everything like visual effects, or like even in cinematography sometimes, like we tend to do everything hyper real and create and like every single time. I remember watching VFX shots like early on, and Francis was like, no, it's like, this is poetic reality, you guys are trying too hard. And that's kind of, I think it's exactly what he wanted for Megalopolis. It's like certain imperfections, and it's like, and it kind of it pairs really well with that idea where you mix a speed graphic and modern Sony camera.
So you say poetic reality, was that kind of the marching order?
Pretty much. I don't remember exactly when it came from, if he came up with it in post or during shooting, but there was kind of the idea. We're like, a lot of times we're trying too hard to make it hyper real when it's not.
Yeah. Well, in this, like, maybe the only other movie of his I've ever seen that used as many visual effect shots would have been Dracula, but Dracula was using the technology that was available at its time. But also going back to the 1970s, One from the Heart, where he was just doing crazy experimental shit with moving through scrims and continuous stuff. And it's like the level of experimentation. It was interesting to see him experiment with digital technology, because I don't know that he's ever made a movie that had this much digital. Like, there's a lot of VFX. There's a lot of, I assume it was green screen. I don't know. You could tell me, but I don't know how else you do it, but it's certainly compositing kind of stuff. And how did that kind of affect like your work on set, and how you approached like what you was it like, oh, here's the image we're eventually going to get, and we're kind of looking at it, and this is what the green screen is going to be all over here, or we don't know what it is yet because Francis is going to come up with some cool ideas that he hasn't done yet, or like, it seems like his brain works slightly non-linearly in that way.
Yeah, I mean, there were things that we had no idea how they will end up looking, and like we were trying to discover together. But like, again, what's interesting about it is like we didn't do a lot of green screen work. We had some scenes that were like full on green screen, but we did 3 major scenes on volume, and that was an interesting.
Which were the volume ones?
Approach. Well, the clock face.
Yeah. That was
girders. Yeah, and it's great because I mean he's one of those directors who will embrace technology right away. Like, no, the interesting part, and like what's interesting about the volume is for the actors as well. It's great because they can see the environment, and like for everybody is really great. Now, there's that idea that the volume will solve your problem, and it's kind of far from the truth.
We've had that debunked a few times on.
Yeah, that's not true.
Well, I mean, if you again, and that's the problem. If you plan for it, and if you pre-light it and rehearse, that's great, but we tried not to do that. And of course, when you change your mind and have to spin the environment and change a bunch of stuff, then it's a lot of wait time. But that being said, like the fact that, and also the opening scene with Caesar on the top of the Chrysler building, like the fact that we could have the clouds stop in real time.
Yeah, that was cool.
We could we actually used the big LED light, and we video mapped basically the sun, the clouds passing in front of the sun. So there's like a huge advantage there, the fact that you can use a big source with that, and just like light it with,
Also, when
with a lot of.
you're doing stuff like that, that's like a lot of metal and glass textures, that notoriously doesn't lend itself to green screen at all because it just screws up all the reflections and becomes a
Exactly. Yeah.
compositing nightmare to make it sell.
Yeah. Yeah. So and also another example is which is by far my favorite scene from the entire movie. It's a weird dream driving scene where Caesar is followed, and that started as a poor man's process. Like, we didn't even want to do LED walls. The idea was like, let's do it like in the old days with a few moving lights, some rain, and shaking the car a little bit. And we knew it's such a long scene that will require a lot more days, but like, we allowed only 2 days for that poor man's process just to see what we learned from it. And that evolved into like an amazing, like we built small moving sets, and then miniature cars, and statues, which are actually like people wearing makeup. And
Oh, is that what that was?
yeah, and also like a miniature car that will match the scale. So it's like it was quite amazing, and like it evolved so much, and most of it was in camera. Roman Coppola, who was our second unit director and cinematographer, like he shot bunch of that scene with the whole scene with the statue. He shot that with second unit, and it was amazing to watch, for sure.
All right, so it's just us now. So I tried to give Ben as much time with you as I possibly could before I knew he had to go. Now I've got you all to myself. So I want to talk to you about a couple things specifically about the movie and some general sort of stuff. But like, I wonder if you could break down sort of the wedding sequence. There's so much that happens during that moment in the movie between like, looks like wire work and acrobats and things. And it's like, it's just like, there's so much happening. I got to imagine that when you get the script, it's like, okay, we've got a couple of days to do this. We've got like, we got a lot of things. Can you talk about like just the visual creation and how you go about marshaling the resources to make that scene fit, to make it all a coherent part of the story?
It was great. I mean, the way Francis described it to us was like, he was telling everybody, it's like, if you guys remember the helicopter scene in Apocalypse Now, this is what Madison Square Garden is for Megalopolis, pretty much. So we knew it's like such a big scene, and amazingly, it was even bigger than, like, of course, that what it's in the movie. But one of the ideas was like, what if, like, how would Busby Berkeley shoot this scene? And that's why there were so many elements. We did use a real arena for some of it, and then all the like Mayor's box and Crassus's box and all those were on stage. But it was, and the great part is that we started with the arena, which was at least giving us something that it's real size wise, and we used a real arena in Atlanta, and had real chariots and all that. So that kind of told us the scale. So when we went to shoot all the other small scenes on the stage, we had an idea of like what it's at least trying to figure out, because my main thing was there are all these little bits everywhere, and we were trying to create a timeline lighting wise, whatever it's happening in the arena, because the light, no matter what, will spill a little bit into the into the mayor's box or Crassus box or anywhere the audience was. So it was interesting. Like, we were like doing all these planning and trying to create different looks and trying to see which small scene will fit where. It was pretty much like preparing for a concert. I don't even remember how many light sources we had, but it was in the hundreds for sure. We did a quite amazing lighting previews that allowed us to see, first of all, how much time we need for rigging, but also how many fixtures and so on. So it was quite amazing, like doing that in the full scale arena and then kind of shrinking down for the stage work. But it was a giant scene. Like if you count the exterior as well, it's like it's 2/3. It's probably half of the half of the movie in terms of scale and everything.
It's a big chunk. Could you do you know, like, if you had to guess the number of days for that sequence between the stage work and the arena work, how many days did you think that sequence took?
I think we did have like 4 days for the real arena, and I think we had like 2 weeks and something for the stage work. But again, there were like bunch of other like small bits and with Caesar and all the dream weird part of it. So probably even more than 2 weeks in total. Yeah.
I remember thinking to myself, like, 2 or 3 times during this, like, this scene is still going on. We're still in this scene. This is still happening. It's like it's a major chunk there. I want to also talk to you about the color. I feel like the color palette of this movie is particularly interesting, and there's a lot that's going on with like yellows and sepia, and I mean, there's sort of at once this sort of like neo-noir sort of feel to it, and at the same time it's like sort of nostalgic, or it's like time out of place. And I know that it all fits into this sort of like the ethereal sort of like feeling. But can you talk a little bit about where this color palette comes from? It's more than just a simple LUT. There's a lot of stuff happening with the color. What was the and does the color play a character almost in this? It's like it's a thing.
I think it does. I mean, it's like again, working for so long with Francis, like I kind of like we discover early on that we like contrast. We both like dark shadows, and we tend to like warm colors. But like I think it's also we like those because we do like to have a contrast, and we do like blue scenes as well, and sometimes mixing those, like if you lean only one way and you have no color contrast, then it's kind of it loses a little bit of its hue. And one thing that I always do when I have a visual reference, but again, like here, it was more than just a visual reference because it was the art keyframe. I usually, with my all-time collaborator Eli Berg, my DIT, we actually loaded all those keyframes in his system, so it was very easy to compare when we were lighting a scene and just create a CDL that will match that keyframe. And that's why I think that was like the best roadmap for everybody. It was really great to kind of match the ideas that Francis had.
Yeah, it's a real intense look. And I got to say that when I was in the theater, or actually I should say right after coming out of the theater, I had a conversation with several other people who just also came out of the movie as well. And the look and the color palette and just sort of the style of the cinematography, all is what we universally agreed on, really stuck out as being this sort of like almost magical and surreal in moments. And I guess what I'm curious about is, in your conversations for how you go about creating this, was there various moments where it was like, oh no, we got to amp this up, or no, we got to turn this down, or how much of how realistic was the cinematography supposed to be in it? I know it fits inside the world, but what is the battle that you're fighting to kind of hit that balance just so?
I think it also again like comes from our initial approach, because for most of them, but it started with Youth Without Youth, where Francis came up with this idea that, like, because he loves Ozu so much, he was like, what if we don't move the camera like at all, or like we have only 1 or 2 dolly shots for the entire movie, and we did that, and it worked really well. It seemed really restrictive at the beginning, but then you realize like it kind of forces you to compose better. And the idea was like, even for basic stuff, like if an actor is sitting and then standing in the same shot, you don't tilt up, you don't follow them, you just like let them go out of shot, and then you position a second camera, or you position a camera for him entering the shot. And there was an approach that we ended up using for 3 movies. For Megalopolis, Francis came up with the idea of like introducing a little more floating, and but again, he was like, we shouldn't go away completely from our Ozu approach. So we
it's
a lot
so
of
funny
times.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just would not have really thought that Yasujiro Ozu, director of like Tokyo Story and Late Spring, and it like was an influence for framing for this. It just it didn't enter. But now that you mention it, I get the idea. But that's I mean. That's so interesting to me, because it seems like you couldn't get 2 things that are in some ways further apart, but there is a lot of like just letting it sit there. So it's kind of amazing that all these years later, like 70 years later, that Ozu is still having like major impact on the world of cinema. So this is what did you guys review Ozu's work before you got into this? Was this a thing that you?
We did very early on. I mean, definitely for Use Without Use and Tetro, and then it became like a second nature for us.
Wow.
I mean, it's like I do like placing the camera fairly low sometimes, but like it's all about the frozen frame, and it's a certain aesthetic that I like, because it's closer to still photography, and it's really. There are things that are happening that you don't think of, like a lot of times it's like, oh yeah, I'll just leave it there. It's like, yeah, it's not just that. You have to make sure the composition is really spot on. And also like, it's again, the idea of contrast. Like when you do move the camera, like that better be for a good reason, because it will stand out for sure. But I mean, we had quite a lot of techno cranes and dollies and a lot of moves in Megalopolis. It's just that like, even like scenes where that didn't require as much movement, we tried to be true to our visual style, to keep it locked.
Yeah, and good on you for that. I immediately think of other sort of like, well, not exactly modern by today's standards, but like Down by Law. Like Jim Jarmusch famously said that Ozu was a big impact, and a stark color palette too, which is similar. Talk to me a little bit about the experimental nature almost of this movie, because it seems to me like on some level it is. Yeah, if you're saying that, like, influenced by Ozu, and it's like, which is in some ways like this very sort of like tradition of a certain type of cinema, but other parts of this movie feel so like, it feel like such an amalgam of all of these different sorts of influences and sources and things. It almost schizophrenic. How do you keep true to your North Star as you move through it? Is it just a conversation? How do you get down to the nitty gritty of what the scene is and how best to show what's happening?
I think that's the luxury of like allowing yourself to try things, and you won't get it right all the time. Like sometimes you'll fail, and it's fine. Like if you have the luxury of trying, it's like, it's kind of like, I don't want to be harsh, but it's like, there is something strange about like when you paint by numbers, compared to just like,
agreed.
Let's allow ourselves and like figure out what, and like, of course, like, I don't know what the success rate would be, but like just by trying crazy things and new things, you'll get something for sure. And it gets to a point where you're trying and you'll feel right away if it works or not, and then you readjust and regroup and and do something else. But I think it's something really, really amazing and beautiful about going as crazy as possible for certain things, you know.
And it's true though, because there's a grounding though that happens too. Like I think of like one shot, then thinking back, I think there's like a shot in the back of a taxi cab, which is just like the windows are wet and there's just this incredible bokeh. It's like, it might be, for my money, like one of the most beautiful shots in the entire movie. And it's just like, it's a simple close-up. It's a simple close-up in this thing. And it's like the amount of, I feel like, I don't know if it's happy accident. I don't know if you know the shot exactly I'm talking about, but it's just like chef's kiss. It's like, it's such this beautiful, perfect, like sort of like little moment inside of all this other stuff. And I feel like as I'm watching the movie, it's like, I'm sort of hanging on to these moments. I'm hanging on to these moments of like, what here is really resonating with me. And exactly like I said before, leaving the theater and talking to the other audience members there, everyone's hanging on the cinematography. The cinematography is this connective tissue, this connective glue to the story that leads you through all of these different things. And it seems to me like that's just a, it's a monumental undertaking and something that has to be so intentional.
Thank you. I mean, again, I think it's so much teamwork, and it's great. It's like, it's such a big collaboration, because like sometimes I can't tell like which were my ideas, which were Francis's ideas. You know, it's like there's like so much, like all the amazing shots that are as much Francis's as mine. You know, it's like, it's not like he gave me the script and I just provided that. It was such a it's truly a perfect collaboration, if you ask me, because like he will know. It's like, that's why I think that relationship where like he pushes me in a corner, but like he knows I like that, and like that I was honestly like, that's my one of my biggest fears to just like, when you start to be comfortable and like just when you're in your comfort zone, it's like you start repeating yourself. So like he knows that like I'll find a solution that will be great. So that's why it's like so much is because of his approach, you know.
Yeah, I really get it. Well, Mihai, I think that's a really great place for us to leave it. Are you out in the world on the social medias? Is there some place that people can find you, or do you have an Instagram or things like that if they want to track you down?
I do have two Instagrams actually,
all right.
Because I'm trying to separate my still photography work from the cinematography, so I have one for both.
Well, tell us what they are, so our listeners can
so
go.
So it's my last name. It's Mălaimare Jr. _ cinematography or _ photography.
Fantastic. Well, Mihai, it's been fantastic. You're a real delight. I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
All right, so that was Mihai Mălaimare. Thank you so much for coming on the show and talking to us all about Megalopolis once again. Can't wait to see what you're working on next.
Mihai's awesome. I love his stuff.
I do as well. Ben, it is time to pay the bills.
All right.
We got to thank our fine friends over at Arri, makers of all kinds of professional cameras, lenses, and lighting. When you talk about companies that have been in the entertainment industry 100 years, there's not too many of them out there, especially in the tech space. And Arri is one of them. I think 105 years now or something like that. So yeah, they've been around for a minute. But they do not rest on their laurels. They have been innovating and figuring out new ways to do things. And one of the things, I've mentioned it on the show before, but I don't think gets enough attention, is how they're moving into live events, live television. They have taken their, world-class leading Alexa 35 camera and developed a live version of it. Essentially, it allows you to have all the same sort of form and function that you would get out of a broadcast studio camera, but it's an Alexa 35. And there's a really nice piece about their capturing of the Sharon David touring show on their website right now. It just went live this past week. And Sharon David, you might be going like, who's Sharon David? You're a 50-year-old man. You know who Sharon David is? So, well, a lot of the world a lot of the world does. It's just not our demographic. She's sort of like a rapper and singer in Germany, and she's got like 7 million Instagram followers. So it's like,
to be fair, even when I was 20, I didn't know who the German rappers were.
Anyway, she has on tour right now, and Arri has been providing their camera equipment, their lighting equipment, and there's sort of like a breakdown explaining what's been going on and some testimonials from different people, and you get to see a little bit of the sort of like the their LPS1 base stations, which connect to all their system and make it work together. So it's really interesting because Arri is not just about cinema anymore. They got into all kinds of new live production sort of space, and the Alexa 35 is probably the largest example of it. So I'm sure that this is going to be able to be seen somewhere. I know that it's also being used in the concert. So like if you were to go see any sort of like Taylor Swift or something like that in the giant stadium where you have the huge screens, that is what these cameras are capturing. But it's pretty amazing to be able to bring, the look of cinema to live events, which is something that Arri seems very uniquely, a unique ability to do. Most of the other companies out there are doing that. They've got different ideas of what a broadcast look or what a live look is and what a cinema look is. So to try to, to bring that into this new space, it's really compelling. Check out the Arri website. It's right on the front cover for the Sharon David touring show, and you can read all about it. And the Alexa 35. Of course, the Alexa 35 Live is available from Hot Rod Cameras. If you're into this sort of thing, hit us up and we can give you a quote.
Definitely. Very cool.
And now, short ends.
All right, Ben, is our famed short end time of the show. It's when we talk about our pet obsessions. It's could be anything. What are you all about this week?
So the other night, it was kind of late. I just gotten my son to go to sleep, and I hopped on Tubi, and I was looking for something kind of documentary-ish, and I landed on a movie that is not my short end, called Michael Cimino, God Bless America. And it was a documentary made by Jean-Baptiste Thoret, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And it was all about Michael Cimino, but I ultimately found it to be a little underwhelming. And I felt like I didn't really walk away with much of an understanding of him. But then I was saved by the algorithm of Tubi, which recommended another movie about a movie called Alan Pakula Going for Truth, a documentary about Alan Pakula. I always want to say Pakula because it rhymes with Dracula, but it's Pakula. And this movie has interviews with Meryl Streep, Robert Redford, Jane Fonda, Harrison Ford, Julia Roberts, Jeff Bridges, Steven Soderbergh, Dustin Hoffman, on and on and on, Kevin Kline, Bob Woodward. So, if you're not familiar with Alan Pakula, like he directed, probably the most famous one he did was All the President's Men, but he directed a bajillion really notable movies right up, and he died due to a freak accident when he was 70. He directed Sophie's Choice, a movie that, it's like he's the real deal. And it was like, I think that in this day and age, we don't really, maybe we do have an Alan Pakula that I'm just not recognizing as such. Out there making movies, but I feel like we desperately need that director who's like a thoughtful, introspective, intellectual kind of a person who makes these movies. I guess maybe you could say David Fincher is this kind of guy. A movie like Zodiac is definitely taking notes from Alan Pakula's movies, and I just thought it was an excellent documentary. It's on Tubi, and it's so interesting to see like this guy who is kind of like an intellectual person who wasn't making superhero movies and wasn't trying to, and never made a horror movie. He made dramas for grown-ups. That's what this guy did, and he worked with everybody, and led people to Oscars, et cetera, et cetera. Just freaking brilliant. And I think it's a really well put together documentary. It's definitely worth checking out, but definitely check out the documentary and, go check out some Alan Pakula films. Like he's, definitely one of the greats of his era, definitely in so many ways synonymous with his own era.
Yeah. I'd say start with All the President's Men. It's great.
All the President's Men or Clute or
Yeah.
Parallax
sure.
View.
Any of those. Yeah, for sure.
All right. So, Ilya, what is your pet obsession this week?
It's Squid Game season 3.
All right.
And I feel like I should just stop right there, because while it's my obsession, I also feel like it's really good for people not to. I mean, look, if you're not watching season 3, if you didn't watch season 1 and season 2, there's no point. I kind of wish I'd gone back and rewatched season 2, maybe a little bit before season 3. There was just enough time for me to forget a couple of things, but nothing really important. I definitely there's no recaps in Netflix's season 3. So but I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it from beginning to end. The ending has got to say some twists, and there is a cameo that at the very, very end, have you seen this, Ben? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I haven't seen season 3 yet.
Okay. So there's a cameo at the very end, which leads to a lot of speculation. Here mentioning David Fincher twice in this episode, because David Fincher was supposedly in talks to develop some sort of Squid Game spin-off season 4 or reboot or something for Netflix. But there's further evidence when you see it at the very end. Cate Blanchett has a cameo, and it's like, Cate Blanchett in Squid Game? No one expects this, but there she is. And it's like, it feels like, hey, here's a way for us to draw some audience who are already, Squid Game fans. Squid Game, I've never seen a show probably more nihilistic than Squid Game. It is such a nihilistic show. It feels to me like on every level this show shouldn't work, and yet it does. And it's gory and it's visceral, but it does. It totally works. And I got to say, by the time you get to the end of it and you have your Cate Blanchett cameo, it left me going like, okay, well, at first I was like, I'm not sure I could watch any more of this. I'm not sure if I could go to another season. But now it's like, I'm intrigued. I don't know. Where it's going to go next. So it's very interesting. I'm not going to say anything else. If someone really wants to know about the Cate Blanchett cameo, it's all over the internet by now. You can completely Google this. If you are a Squid Game person, it's worth getting into season 3, but be careful. It is probably as binge-worthy as anything that Netflix has ever done.
Whoa.
So you might find yourself going immediately from, episode 1 to episode 2, episode 3 of season 3 really quickly. And if you don't have the hours in your day or your life to prepare for that, just be aware, because it's more and more cliffhangers. It's all the cliffhangers of Squid Game, one after another, until the very end. And boy, that the last episode is. I'll say nothing else. But if you're a Squid Game person, go watch Squid Game season 3.
All right. Definitely.
All right, Ben, that just about does it for us. Where can people find you if they want to track you down?
Please find me at benrock.com. That's where you can find all the information you ever wanted to know about me. You can find me on LinkedIn or Instagram, Facebook. Not really on X anymore. I'm on Blue Sky. I mean, I'm on X, but infrequently. Blue Sky, etc. How about yourself, Ilya? Where can people find you?
They can find me over at Hot Red Cameras, hotredcameras.com. You can also find me over at Betty Lights. Betty Lights is our lighting company, which is, I'll have some updates sooner rather than later. But a lot of people have been checking out our new reflector system, which is great. And I've been traveling the world and showing it to people. So there's a lot of stuff happening with that, which is lovely. And you can also find me over at LinkedIn, Instagram. Those seem to be the social media emails I am checking most often these days. I don't know what happened with Facebook. I kind of fell off a cliff there. I haven't been there in a while. So anyway, yeah,
it's probably better for you.
Probably better. I do feel mentally healthier for that, but
yeah. I get where you're coming from. So Ilya, who do we need to thank this fine episode?
Let's start off by thanking Kays Alatrachi. Kays, who, inspired this episode in more ways than he knows. Also, the composer of all the music that you heard on this episode. Go and track him down, musicbykays.com. Also, Kays Lab over at YouTube, where he will fix, for your viewing pleasure, classic synthesizers. He does it on
Nice.
camera. It's a lot of fun. We got to thank Alana Cody, who is the producer who makes all of these episodes happen and is working on a bunch of new episodes right now. So that's exciting. And Charlie Nix. We got to thank Charlie Nix, our editor extraordinaire, who has been slicing up these episodes, trying to whittle our shows down to reasonable lengths that everyone can enjoy.
Good luck with that.
Good luck, Charlie. All right. That just about does it for us, Ben. You want to take us out?
Thanks for tuning in.
This has been the Cinematography Podcast, presented by Hot Rod Cameras. Find your next camera, lens, or accessory on the web at hotrodcameras.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our show on iTunes and connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for listening.